Daniel's bold stand for faith. Welcome to our channel, where we delve into the timeless stories of faith, courage, and divine intervention from the Bible. Today we're exploring the remarkable story of Daniel, a young Hebrew whose unwavering faith and integrity shone brightly in the heart of the mighty Babylonian Empire. Captured and taken far from his homeland, Daniel faced immense pressure to conform to a culture that stood in stark contrast to his beliefs. Yet through trials and triumphs, he stood firm in his devotion to God, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire millions. Join us as we journey through Daniel's stand for faith and discover the powerful lessons his story holds for us today. Before we proceed, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more insights and tales from the Bible. In the ancient kingdom of Babylon, a young Hebrew named Daniel found himself in a land far from home. Taken captive during the siege of Jerusalem, Daniel was among the many who were brought to serve in the court of King Nebuchadnezzar. This transition from the sacred city of Jerusalem to the imposing walls of Babylon was a dramatic shift for Daniel. Jerusalem, with its temple dedicated to the worship of Yahweh, was a place where the presence of God was felt deeply. The city was not only the political center of Israel, but also its spiritual heart, a tangible symbol of God's covenant with his people. It was where the festivals and sacrifices took place, where the law was taught, and where the faithful could gather to worship the one true God. Daniel chapter 1, verse 6 to 21. In stark contrast, Babylon was a hub of polytheism and idol worship, a land renowned for its opulence, advanced culture, and the mighty Euphrates River that flowed through its heart. The city was a marvel of ancient engineering and architecture, boasting the famous Hanging Gardens, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Its streets were lined with temples dedicated to various deities, and its ziggurats towered high, symbolizing the Babylonian belief in their god's supremacy and their own cultural dominance. For Daniel, this change was not just a geographical relocation, but a profound cultural and spiritual displacement. The loss of Jerusalem was more than a physical separation. It was a severing from the place where his faith was most alive, where the rituals and rhythms of daily life were intertwined with his worship of Yahweh. In Jerusalem, every aspect of life was underpinned by a covenantal relationship with God, reinforced through the practices and teachings centered on the temple. In Babylon, Daniel was surrounded by a pantheon of gods and the pervasive influence of a culture that celebrated human achievement and divine plurality. The Babylonians took pride in their city's splendor, their military might, and their intellectual advancements. They valued astrology, divination, and the arts of magic, seeking wisdom from the stars and relying on omens. These practices were antithetical to the Hebrew faith, which was grounded in the worship of a singular, sovereign God who forbade idolatry and divination. As he walked through the grand streets of Babylon, with its imposing palaces and bustling marketplaces, he would have been acutely aware of the profound differences between this place and his homeland. The food, the language, the customs, everything was a constant reminder that he was in exile. Yet despite these overwhelming changes, Daniel's faith did not waver. His heart remained steadfast in its devotion to Yahweh, and his daily practices reflected an unbroken connection to his heritage. This steadfastness was not without its challenges. The Babylonians, keen on integrating their captives into their culture, imposed their language, education, and even names upon them. Daniel, along with his friends, was enrolled in a rigorous program designed to transform them into loyal servants of the Babylonian Empire. They were taught the Chaldean language and literature, which included the myths and religious texts of the Babylonians. This education was intended to reshape their identities, to make them more Babylonian than Hebrew. Yet Daniel's commitment to his faith was evident from the beginning. He resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, a decision that was both a dietary choice and a profound act of spiritual resistance. This refusal to assimilate fully into Babylonian culture was a declaration of his continued allegiance to Yahweh, a silent but powerful statement that his identity as a servant of God would not be erased. The dramatic shift from Jerusalem to Babylon was more than a change in location. It was a test of faith, identity, and resilience. In the face of immense pressure to conform, Daniel's unwavering dedication to God stood as a beacon of hope and integrity. His life in Babylon, marked by challenges and triumphs, demonstrated that true faith can endure and flourish even in the most foreign and hostile environments. Daniel's story is a testament to the power of steadfast faith in the enduring presence of God, even in the heart of a pagan empire. The city of Babylon, the heart of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, was a dazzling spectacle of human achievement and a labyrinthine testament to idolatry. Its grandeur was evident in every corner, from the towering ziggurats, their stepped pyramids seeming to pierce the heavens, to the resplendent Ishtar Gate, its azure-glazed tiles depicting fierce dragons and majestic bulls in a riot of color and detail. Legend whispered of the fabled Hanging Gardens, an oasis of lush greenery and cascading waterfalls, a marvel of engineering that defied the arid landscape. Everywhere Daniel turned, his eyes were met with the symbols and idols of a pantheon of gods. Statues of Marduk, the patron deity of Babylon, adorned temples and public spaces, his imposing figure a constant reminder of the city's devotion to him. The goddess Ishtar, revered as the queen of heaven and the embodiment of love and fertility, was worshipped with passionate fervor, her image gracing countless shrines and altars. The streets of Babylon buzzed with a cacophony of sounds, the chanting of priests, the rhythmic beat of drums, and the cries of street vendors hawking their wares. The air was thick with the scent of incense, burnt offerings, and exotic spices. Festivals and religious ceremonies punctuated the calendar, each one a vibrant celebration of the city's gods and a reaffirmation of its religious identity. Idolatry was not merely a religious practice in Babylon, it was a way of life. It permeated every aspect of society, from the royal court to the marketplace, from the temples to the homes of the ordinary people. The Babylonians believed that their gods controlled every aspect of their lives, from the weather and harvests to their personal fortunes and relationships. They sought to appease these gods through elaborate rituals, sacrifices, and offerings, hoping to secure their favor and protection. The air was thick with the scent of incense, burnt offerings, and the sounds of prayers and chants. Temples to gods such as Marduk, the chief deity, Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, and Nabu, the god of wisdom and writing, dominated the skyline. These temples were not just places of worship, but centers of social and economic activity, where priests wielded significant power and influence. The royal court was the epicenter of this idolatrous culture. King Nebuchadnezzar himself was seen as semi-divine, a representative of the gods on earth whose reign was sanctioned by the heavens. State rituals often involved grand processions, where the king would lead the populace in acts of devotion to the gods, demonstrating his piety and reinforcing his divine right to rule. These events were designed to display the wealth, power, and religious fervor of the Babylonian Empire, and participation in them was seen as both a civic duty and a religious obligation. In the marketplace, trade and commerce were infused with religious significance. Merchants would invoke the blessings of trade deities before conducting business, and it was common to find small altars or idols in their stalls. Contracts and transactions were often sealed with oaths taken in the name of the gods, and successful ventures were celebrated with offerings of thanks. The belief that the gods directly influenced success and failure in business made idolatrous practices an integral part of economic life. In the homes of ordinary Babylonians, household gods and ancestral spirits were venerated. Families maintained small altars where they performed daily rituals, seeking the gods' favor for health, prosperity, and protection. Life events such as births, marriages, and deaths were accompanied by specific rites to honor and appease the deities. These practices were passed down through generations, ensuring that the cycle of devotion and sacrifice remained unbroken. The agricultural calendar was also deeply intertwined with religious observance. Festivals and holy days punctuated the year, each dedicated to specific gods associated with the seasons, fertility, and harvests. The most significant of these was the New Year festival, Akitu, which celebrated the victory of Marduk over the forces of chaos and symbolized the renewal of life and order. During this festival, the king would undergo a ritual humiliation and then be reinstated, reaffirming his divine mandate to rule. For the Babylonians, idolatry was more than a set of beliefs. It was a comprehensive system that dictated their understanding of the world and their place within it. The gods were seen as capricious beings whose favor was essential for the well-being of individuals and the state. This worldview fostered a culture of dependence on the divine, where every success was attributed to the gods' favor and every misfortune to their displeasure. Amidst this deeply entrenched idolatrous culture, Daniel's steadfast monotheism stood in stark contrast. His refusal to participate in the worship of Babylonian gods was not just a personal religious choice, but a radical act of defiance against societal norms. It highlighted his unwavering commitment to the God of Israel and his resistance to the pervasive influence of Babylonian idolatry. Daniel's faithfulness in the face of such overwhelming pressure serves as a powerful testament to the resilience of true devotion and the enduring strength of faith in the one true God. For Daniel, a young Jewish man raised in the monotheistic tradition of his forefathers, the pervasive idolatry of Babylon presented a profound challenge. He was surrounded by temptations to compromise his faith, to conform to the religious practices of his captors, and to abandon the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yet Daniel's faith remained steadfast. He refused to bow down to the idols of Babylon, choosing instead to remain true to the God of Israel, even at the risk of persecution and death. His solid devotion to God in the face of overwhelming pressure and temptation is a testament to his courage, integrity, and unwavering faith. His story serves as a powerful reminder that we too are called to live lives of faithfulness and obedience, even when surrounded by a culture that promotes values and practices that are contrary to God's will. Despite the grandeur and allure of the Babylonian Empire, with its promises of power, luxury, and wisdom, Daniel remained steadfast in his faith. From the moment he arrived, Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, which were often offered to idols before being served. This act of quiet rebellion was his first stand, a testament to his commitment to the dietary laws of his people, and more importantly, to his God. Daniel's heart was anchored in the teachings and commandments he had learned in his youth. His resolve to honor his God in a foreign land that worshipped idols and followed pagan customs set him apart from the very beginning. Daniel's dedication was not merely about adhering to dietary restrictions, it was a profound expression of his identity and faith. He was determined to live a life that was pleasing to God, even if it meant standing alone in a culture that did not understand or respect his beliefs. His decision was a daily act of faith, a constant reminder that he belonged to God, not to the Babylonian Empire. In a world that celebrated the power and might of its kings and idols, Daniel's quiet, steadfast faith was a beacon of light and hope. His pressures to conform were immense. The Babylonians were not only conquerors but also cultural assimilators, masters at erasing the distinctiveness of the peoples they subjugated. Their strategy was to integrate captives into the Babylonian way of life so completely that their original identities would dissolve, making rebellion and resistance unlikely. This process began with the most promising young captives, those with intelligence, physical health, and a capacity for leadership. Among these were Daniel and his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Upon their arrival in Babylon, these young Hebrew were thrust into an environment designed to reshape their identities. They were enrolled in a rigorous program to learn the literature, language, and customs of the Babylonians. This education was comprehensive, covering everything from the epic tales of Babylonian gods and heroes to the intricacies of the Chaldean language, astrology, and divination practices. The intention was clear: to fill their minds with Babylonian knowledge, so thoroughly saturating their thoughts and perspectives that their Hebrew heritage would be supplanted. A critical part of this assimilation process was the renaming of the captives. Names in the ancient Near East were more than mere labels. They were reflections of one's identity and destiny. Daniel and his friends were given new names that honored Babylonian deities. Daniel was renamed Belteshazzar, meaning Bel protects his life, a reference to the Babylonian god Bel. Hananiah became Shadrach, meaning command of Aku, the moon god. Mishael was renamed Meshach, meaning who is what Aku is, and Azariah became Abednego, meaning servant of Nego, likely another deity. This renaming was a deliberate effort to disconnect them from their Hebrew roots and bind them to the Babylonian pantheon. However, despite the Babylonians' efforts to reshape their identities, Daniel's true identity remained unshaken. He understood that his name might have been changed, and he might have been forced to learn a new language and new customs, but the core of who he was, a servant of the God of Israel, remained intact. Daniel's faith was deeply embedded in his heart and mind, and no amount of external pressure could alter that. Daniel and his friends navigated their new lives with wisdom and discernment. They wore the clothes of Babylonian courtiers and participated in the royal court. Yet they did so without compromising their faith. They mastered the Babylonian curriculum, excelling in their studies, but they never allowed the idolatrous elements of their education to infiltrate their beliefs. They stood firm in their conviction that, despite their outward circumstances, they belonged to God. Their diet, which adhered to the laws given by Moses, was a daily reminder of their covenant with God, setting them apart in a tangible way. Daniel's unwavering commitment to his faith was evident in his daily practices. He continued to pray 3 times a day, facing Jerusalem, an act of devotion and remembrance of his homeland and his God. This discipline was more than ritual, it was a lifeline to his heritage and his identity. In the face of immense cultural pressure, Daniel's heart beat with the rhythms of his homeland and the laws of his God, a testament to the power of faith and identity. Even as he rose to positions of influence within the Babylonian Empire, Daniel's loyalty to God remained unassailable. His integrity and wisdom earned him respect and favor, yet he never compromised his beliefs for the sake of advancement. Daniel's story is a powerful example of how true identity and faith can endure even in the most challenging environments. It teaches us that while external circumstances may change, the essence of who we are, shaped by our relationship with God, can remain steadfast and unmovable. Daniel's resolve inspired his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, who also stood firm in their faith. Together, they navigated the complexities of serving in the Babylonian court while remaining true to their heritage and beliefs. Their unity and shared faith provided strength and encouragement, enabling them to face challenges that tested their loyalty to God. They knew that their actions were not just personal choices, but testimonies to the power and faithfulness of their God in a land that did not know him. In this foreign land, Daniel's unwavering faith did not go unnoticed. His wisdom, knowledge, and integrity earned him favor in the eyes of the Babylonian officials. More importantly, his life became a powerful witness to the God of Israel. Through his quiet but resolute actions, Daniel demonstrated that true faith could withstand even the most daunting circumstances. His story reminds us that faithfulness to God often requires courage, perseverance, and a willingness to stand apart from the prevailing culture. In Daniel's stand for faith, we find a timeless example of devotion and integrity, one that continues to inspire believers to live boldly for God in every situation. Daniel, along with his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, was selected to be trained in the ways of the Chaldeans. These young men, chosen for their wisdom, knowledge, and physical appearance, were to undergo a comprehensive education in the literature and language of the Babylonians. This training was designed not only to make them proficient in the ways of their captors, but also to transform their identities, aligning them more closely with Babylonian ideals and customs. They were given new names. Daniel became Belteshazzar, Hananiah became Shadrach, Mishael became Meshach, and Azariah became Abednego. These names were not random. They were carefully chosen to reflect the Babylonian gods, a subtle but powerful attempt to reshape their identities and assimilate them into the Babylonian culture. The king decreed that these young men should partake in the royal food and wine, rich delicacies that were often dedicated to Babylonian gods before being served at the king's table. This food was a symbol of the king's generosity and power, a way to ensure loyalty and dependence on the royal favor. Partaking in these meals was not merely about nutrition. It was an implicit acceptance of the Babylonian way of life, including its religious practices. To eat the king's food was to participate in a system that stood in stark contrast to the dietary laws given by God to the Israelites. However, Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the king's food or wine. His decision was a profound act of faith and courage. Despite the pressure to conform and the potential consequences of defiance, Daniel's heart was set on following the dietary laws prescribed by his faith. These laws, found in the Torah, were more than dietary restrictions. They were expressions of his covenant relationship with God, symbols of holiness and obedience. Daniel's choice reflected a deep commitment to uphold his identity as a follower of the God of Israel, even in a foreign land. This stand marked the beginning of his unwavering commitment to God amidst the challenges he faced. Daniel approached Ashpenaz, the chief official, and requested permission to abstain from the royal provisions. He proposed a 10-day test. He and his friends would consume only vegetables and water, and their health and appearance would be compared with those who ate the king's food. This request was daring, but it was underpinned by Daniel's faith that God would honor their obedience. Ashpenaz, though initially hesitant due to fear of the king's reaction, agreed to the trial. At the end of the 10 days, Daniel and his friends appeared healthier and more nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. This outcome was a clear indication of God's favor and faithfulness, affirming Daniel's trust in him. The chief official was convinced and allowed them to continue with their chosen diet. Daniel's resolve not only preserved his physical health, but also strengthened his spiritual integrity. This act of defiance was not a mere rebellion. It was a declaration of faith, a testament that even in captivity, the God of Israel was sovereign and worthy of obedience. Daniel's commitment to God's laws amidst the allure and pressure of the Babylonian court set a powerful example. His actions demonstrated that faithfulness to God could triumph over cultural assimilation and external pressures. By choosing to honor God above all, Daniel illustrated the importance of staying true to one's beliefs and the strength that comes from unwavering faith. His story encourages us to hold fast to our convictions, trusting that God will provide and protect those who are faithful to him. As it is written in Daniel chapter 1 verse 8, "But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way." As the years passed, Daniel and his friends excelled in wisdom and understanding, earning places of prominence in the Babylonian court. However, their ascent was not without its trials. King Nebuchadnezzar, in a moment of pride and defiance, erected a colossal golden statue and commanded all subjects to worship it. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, now known as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refused to bow down, holding firm to their faith in God. Their defiance enraged the king, who ordered them to be thrown into a fiery furnace. The furnace, heated 7 times hotter than usual, seemed a certain death sentence. Yet as the three were cast into the flames, a miraculous sight unfolded. An angelic figure appeared alongside them, protecting them from harm. Nebuchadnezzar, witnessing this divine intervention, was astounded and declared the greatness of their God. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego emerged from the furnace unscathed, their faith vindicated and God's power undeniably demonstrated. Daniel's own test of faith came under the reign of Darius the Mede. As the new ruler of the Babylonian Empire, Darius recognized Daniel's exceptional qualities and quickly appointed him as one of the 3 administrators over the entire kingdom. Daniel's wisdom, integrity, and spirit set him apart, earning him the king's favor in a position of great responsibility. However, this favor and prominence sparked jealousy and resentment among the other administrators and satraps, who saw Daniel as a threat to their power and influence. Driven by envy, these officials sought to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs. But they could find no corruption in him, because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Realizing that the only way to trap Daniel was through his unwavering devotion to his God, they devised a sinister plan. They approached King Darius with a proposal to issue a decree that for 30 days, anyone who prayed to any god or human being except to the king would be thrown into the lion's den. Flattered by this suggestion, which appealed to his vanity and desire for absolute loyalty, Darius signed the decree into law, unaware of the malicious intent behind it. Knowing that Daniel prayed to his God 3 times a day, the conspirators were confident that he would not comply with the decree. Undeterred by the threat of death, Daniel continued his practice of praying openly in his upstairs room, where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Daniel's faithfulness in prayer was not an act of defiance against the king, but a steadfast commitment to his relationship with God. He fully understood the consequences, Yet his devotion to God was unwavering. When Daniel's enemies found him praying, they wasted no time in reporting it to the king. Reluctantly, Darius was reminded of the irrevocable nature of the laws of the Medes and Persians, which meant he could not rescind the decree he had signed. Despite his deep regret and efforts to save Daniel, the king was bound by his own law. With a heavy heart, Darius ordered Daniel to be thrown into the lion's den, saying, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. That night, King Darius could not eat or sleep, troubled by the fate of his trusted servant. At the first light of dawn, the king hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" To his immense relief, Daniel answered, "May the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. Nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty." Overjoyed, Darius ordered Daniel to be lifted out of the den. Not a scratch was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. The king then commanded that the men who had falsely accused Daniel be brought in and thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children. And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. In response to this miraculous deliverance, King Darius wrote to all the nations and peoples of every language in all the earth, "May you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." Through Daniel's unwavering faith in God's miraculous intervention, the power and sovereignty of the God of Israel were proclaimed throughout the vast empire. Daniel's steadfastness in prayer and trust in God amidst persecution stands as a powerful testament to the enduring strength of faith. His story continues to inspire believers to remain faithful to God, regardless of the trials they face. God's favor upon Daniel was evident as he was elevated to positions of prominence and influence under successive kings. Nebuchadnezzar, impressed by Daniel's ability to interpret dreams and his wise counsel, appointed him as chief administrator over the entire province of Babylon and head of all the wise men. This position granted Daniel significant authority and access to the king, allowing him to influence policy and promote justice. Later, under the reign of King Belshazzar, Daniel's reputation for wisdom and integrity remained intact. When the king and his courtiers were bewildered by a mysterious inscription on the palace wall, it was Daniel who stepped forward, interpreting the message as a divine warning of impending judgment. This act of courage and insight further solidified Daniel's standing in the royal court, and he was rewarded with even greater honor and authority. Following the fall of Babylon to the Medes and Persians, Daniel continued to serve in prominent positions. King Darius, recognizing Daniel's exceptional qualities, appointed him as one of the 3 administrators overseeing the entire kingdom. This position of power allowed Daniel to continue his ministry of upholding justice, promoting righteousness, and influencing the course of events in accordance with God's will. Throughout his life, Daniel's unwavering faith and unyielding integrity were tested time and again. Yet he refused to compromise his beliefs, even when faced with the threat of death. His unwavering devotion to God, even in the face of adversity, serves as an enduring testament to the power of faith and the importance of living a life of integrity. Daniel's story is not merely a historical account. It is a timeless narrative of faith, courage, and resilience. His unwavering commitment to God, his wisdom in interpreting dreams and visions, and his ability to navigate the complexities of political power while remaining true to his convictions have inspired countless generations of believers. Daniel's life is a beacon of hope, demonstrating that even in the darkest of times, God's light can shine through. His story encourages us to stand firm in our faith, even when faced with persecution, opposition, or the allure of worldly compromise. It reminds us that our ultimate allegiance is to God, and that his purposes will prevail, even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty. The story of Daniel is not just for the ancient world, it is for us today. It challenges us to examine our own lives, to confront our own compromises, and to live with the same courage and conviction that Daniel displayed. It reminds us that God is sovereign over all, that he is working his purposes out in the world, and that he calls us to be faithful witnesses to his truth, even in the face of adversity. As we conclude this tale, let us remember the enduring message of Daniel's stand for faith. God's promises are sure, his faithfulness unwavering, and his love everlasting. In the story of Daniel, we find a reflection of our own journey, a journey marked by struggles and triumphs, challenges and victories, but always underpinned by the steadfast love of our Creator. Daniel's unwavering faith invites us to embrace this love, trust in his promises, and live boldly in the light of his eternal kingdom. As we reflect on Daniel's life and legacy, may we be inspired to live lives of unwavering faith, uncompromising integrity, and steadfast devotion to the God who holds our future in his hands. May we, like Daniel, be willing to stand for what is right, to speak truth to power, and to trust in God's unfailing love and guidance, even when the path ahead seems uncertain or fraught with danger. If you found inspiration in Daniel's journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights and tales from the Bible. Thank you for watching.